Princess Kalara of the Zenthari Empire had agreed to the marriage with reluctance bordering on disgust. The human diplomat Marcus Chen was unremarkable by galactic standards. No bioluminescent markings, no telepathic abilities, no natural armor plating. He stood barely 6 feet tall with plain brown eyes and a smile that seemed perpetually amused by some private joke. The Zenthari High Council had insisted this union would cement the peace treaty between humanity and the Empire, ending 3 decades of border skirmishes that had cost both sides dearly. The wedding ceremony was a spectacle broadcast across 17 star systems. Kalara wore the traditional crimson robes of Zenthari royalty, her silver skin shimmering under the ceremonial lights, while Marcus stood beside her in a simple black suit. So typically human, she thought. When he took her 4-fingered hand in his 5-fingered one, she felt the warmth of his skin and wondered if she could truly spend a lifetime with such a fragile creature. The first year of their marriage was diplomatic theater. They attended state functions, smiled for holovids, and maintained separate quarters in the palace. Marcus never complained. He learned the Zenthari language with surprising speed, studied their customs with genuine interest, and treated the palace staff with a kindness that slowly won them over. Kalara found herself drawn to his curiosity, the way he asked questions about everything from Zenthari poetry to quantum navigation, as if each answer was a treasure. Then came the incident at the Theraxian border. The Krell Confederacy, emboldened by what they perceived as Zenthari weakness after the human alliance, launched a brutal assault on the mining colony of Verxis 7. Intelligence reports indicated that Kalara's younger brother, Prince Daron, was visiting the colony to inspect new extraction operations. The attack was swift and merciless. When the Krell transmitted their demands, complete withdrawal from the Outer Rim territories, they included footage that made Kalara's blood run cold. Daron's broken body lay in the rubble of the command center, his breathing shallow, his left arm severed. The Krell commander, a scarred reptilian named Vexthor, held a plasma blade to the young prince's throat and laughed. "Your empire is weak," he hissed in galactic standard. "Your human pets have made you soft." Kalara stood frozen in the war room, surrounded by generals and admirals who argued about response protocols and diplomatic channels. Her hands trembled as she watched her brother's suffering on the view screen. She had been trained since childhood to maintain composure, to think strategically, to never let emotion cloud judgment. But Marcus was not Zenthari. He walked into the war room without permission, his footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. His brown eyes, which had always seemed so gentle, now burned with something the Zenthari had never seen before, not in any species across the known galaxy. It was a fury so absolute, so controlled, that it radiated from him like heat from a dying star. "How long to reach Verxis 7? Marcus asked, his voice perfectly calm. 3 days with our fastest cruiser," Admiral Thexar replied, confused. "But we cannot negotiate with terrorists." The Council— "I'm not negotiating," Marcus interrupted. He turned to Kalara and she saw in his eyes something that made her breath catch. "With your permission, Princess, I'd like to borrow a ship. A small one. And access to your military database." The High Council protested. Humans were allies, yes, but they were not warriors. Their technology was adequate but unremarkable. What could one human do against a Krell battle group? Kalara silenced them with a gesture. Something in Marcus's demeanor reminded her of stories from Earth's history. Stories he had shared during quiet evenings when he thought she wasn't truly listening. Stories of a species that had climbed from prey to apex predator on a death world. Stories of humans who had turned warfare into an art form long before they reached the stars. "Take the Nightfall," she said. "And whatever else you need." Marcus worked for 16 hours straight, barely sleeping. He accessed Earth military archives, records the Zenthari had never fully examined, considering human conflicts primitive and irrelevant. He downloaded specifications for weapons systems that violated 12 interstellar treaties. He studied Krell physiology, psychology, and cultural weaknesses with the methodical precision of a surgeon planning an operation. When the Nightfall launched, it carried Marcus Chen and a cargo hold full of equipment that made the Zenthari weapons officers uncomfortable. He refused an escort. He refused backup. He simply departed with coordinates locked and communications dark. 47 hours later, a Krell distress signal screamed across every emergency channel in the sector. The response teams that eventually reached Verxis 7 found something that would become legend in every bar and briefing room, from the core worlds to the fringe. The Krell battle group, 6 warships, 200 elite soldiers, had been systematically dismantled. Not destroyed in glorious combat. Dismantled. Ships boarded and crews incapacitated with precisely calculated gas attacks. Ground forces neutralized with weapons that induced paralyzing fear through subsonic frequencies. Vexthor himself was found restrained in the colony's medical bay, alive but permanently scarred by psychological warfare techniques that the Krell's therapists would spend years trying to understand. Prince Dayron was safe, receiving treatment, stabilized by field medicine that surpassed Zenthari technology in its elegant simplicity. Marcus returned to the palace 3 days after he'd left. His suit was wrinkled, his face drawn with exhaustion, but his eyes had returned to their normal, gentle warmth. He found Kaylara in the garden, standing among the crystal flowers that bloomed under the twin moons. "Your brother will make a full recovery," he said quietly. "I'm sorry it took so long." Kaylara stared at him, this unremarkable human who had just done what an entire empire's military apparatus had deemed impossible. "The Krell are terrified," she whispered. "They're calling you the Quiet Storm. They're withdrawing from 3 disputed systems without negotiation. Marcus, what did you do to them?" He smiled that private smile she'd seen at their wedding. "I reminded them why humans don't start wars anymore," he said. "We got too good at winning them. We scared ourselves so badly that we decided peace was the only option, but that doesn't mean we forgot how." She understood then what the High Council had never grasped. Humanity's gentleness wasn't weakness. It was a choice made by a species that had mastered violence so completely, they had to consciously step back from the abyss. And when that choice was revoked, when someone threatened what a human loved, the galaxy would remember why Earth's ancient poets had written so extensively about wrath. Kaylara took Marcus's hand, feeling its warmth, its surprising strength. "Thank you," she said, "for my brother. For my people." Marcus squeezed her hand gently. "You're my wife," he said simply. "That makes them my people too." As they walked back to the palace together, Kaylara realized that the marriage she'd entered reluctantly had become something far more valuable than a peace treaty. She had gained a partner who embodied the most terrifying truth about humanity, that their capacity for love was matched only by their capacity for retribution, and mercy was the gift they chose to give, not a limitation they suffered under. The galaxy would remember Verxis 7, and they would think twice before testing human patience again.